In a rotten small town ruled by dirty badges, the deputy chief's son sneered. Trash like you doesn't deserve a Harley or even a place here. With a vicious grin, he yanked the pump, soaking Jade's prized bike in gasoline while his crew pinned her down, their cruel laughter swallowed by the explosive roar of flames consuming everything she loved. But her scream wasn't defeat. It was a war cry. One single call summoned thunder, 40 Hell's Angels roaring in like Judgment Day, forcing the untouchable bully to his knees, begging the girl he'd tried to break. That fire didn't end with revenge. It exposed a web of drugs, stolen badges, and corruption that would burn the entire power structure to the ground. Ready for the real downfall? Hit subscribe. Justice is just getting started.
But she'd learned to live with the staring. What she could never quite stomach was the poison that sometimes rode in on its heels. Jade, 18, razor-sharp and poised in a way only forged in the shadows of outlaws, had skin like polished walnut and eyes that missed nothing. Her dark hair was pulled back tight beneath a bandana studded with faded biker patches, her black tank top and torn jeans carrying the faint grit of endless highways. She stood next to her Harley, fueling it with steady hands, acting as if she hadn't caught every muttered slur drifting from the porch behind her. That was when Ryder arrived, rolling in like a storm looking for somewhere to break. 19, broad-chested, hard around the edges, with a cruelty that thrived on other people's fear. Ryder always needed an audience. Tonight he had one. 3 boys in Letterman jackets, red dust caked on their sneakers, trailing him with the lazy arrogance of small-town princes who never had to pay for anything, who laughed too loud at stumbling teachers, who knew the rules were made to bend for them. Ryder's gaze locked on Jade, hungry and sharp. He'd seen her before, always on the fringes of the cafeteria, quiet, guarded, never giving him the reaction he craved. He'd called her stray more than once, but today, watching her beside that gleaming Harley, something inside him cracked wide open. "Hey," he barked, striding across the broken concrete, voice bouncing off the pumps. His crew followed, shoving each other, grins already cruel. Jade didn't turn. She simply clicked the gas cap shut, slipped the keys into her pocket, and breathed out slow and even. Ryder planted himself inches away, chin high. "Where'd you steal that bike?" he sneered, loud enough for the whole lot to hear. "Bet you've never owned a damn thing in your life. People like you shouldn't even breathe our air, let alone ride something like that." The words cut through the fading light, familiar and bitter, but Jade had heard worse. She kept her stare fixed on the Harley, voice calm and flat. "Move out of my way." Ryder laughed, mocking, closing the distance until she could smell the beer on him. "Hear that, boys? The charity case thinks she's giving orders. That's your daddy's bike, right? Or are you just holding it till you boost somebody else's?" His friends circled, waiting for her to shrink, to flinch, to play small. She did none of it. Instead, she squared her shoulders, eyes steady. "Don't touch my bike," she said, low and even. Ryder's grin twisted. "And what exactly are you gonna do if I do?" He reached out, fingers curling as if to claim her arm, possessive, daring. In an instant, her hand shot up, clamping around his wrist with speed and precision. She didn't crush, just held, her dark eyes calm and unyielding. "Don't ever touch me," she said. A beat of silence. Then she released him and stepped back, widening the space between them. Ryder jerked his hand away, stunned by her grip, then flushed with the humiliation of being seen. Rage flared hot behind his eyes. "You got a real attitude problem, you know that?" he snapped, glancing back for the expected laughter from his crew. They snickered on cue, smelling weakness, but Jade refused to feed them. She lifted her chin, jaw locked. "I'm just trying to get home. I don't want trouble." Ryder circled, blocking her path to the store.
"That's too bad," he taunted, voice dripping with the special venom of someone raised on unchecked power. "'Cause trouble just found you." He leaned in close, dropping to a hiss. "You see, my dad's the deputy chief around here. Means I decide who rides and who walks. And you," his breath was hot against her ear, "you're about to learn how small this town really gets." Jade finally met his eyes, really met them, unwavering. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," she said, the words cold and certain as forged steel. Ryder froze, thrown by the absolute conviction in her voice. No shake, no begging, just the quiet strength of someone who'd survived far worse. His crew went quiet, shifting uncomfortably as the air in the lot shifted. He swallowed hard, pride stung by the missing laughter behind him, then jerked his chin sharply. "You heard her? Let's teach this outsider a lesson." His friends spread out, forming a tightening ring of menace, determined to stamp out the defiance that had dared embarrass their king. Those boys weren't just jocks, they were heirs to entitlement, trained from birth in the fine art of breaking people down. They called themselves brothers, but loyalty meant never challenging the leader, never risking their own skin for what was right.
They never risked their own skin for what was right. Tonight, cruelty was the only coin they traded in. Mason, the one with freckles scattered across his nose, spoke up first. "Look at this, boys. Nice bike for a charity case. Bet her family saved up bottle deposits for years just so she could fake belonging here." Laughter spread through the tightening circle like ripples on dirty water. Blake, the tallest of them, joined in, raising his voice so the whole lot could hear. "She doesn't even have a real dad, does she? Just a stray scraping leftovers from whatever broke-down family lets her crash." Jade answered every jab with silence, sharper than words, studying their faces, clocking the rush they got from each hit. Yet beneath the bravado, she caught something else. Quick, nervous glances toward the security camera bolted above the store door. Even in their own kingdom, these jocks knew certain lines existed. But tonight, shielded by Ryder's shadow, those lines dissolved. One of them sneered, pointing at her Harley. "Maybe you should show us the registration, or are you planning to bolt the second the cops show?" Mason, riding the high, stepped closer and spat on the ground at her feet. "Face it, nobody wants you here. Crawl back to whatever hole you came from." Ryder watched her closely, waiting for the flinch, the plea, anything he could devour. Instead, her gaze slid past him, first to the camera, then across the pumps, finally locking on the pickup parked at the lot's edge. One rear wheel sat noticeably lower than the other. She tucked that detail away like armor against the storm of hate. A sharp metallic bang snapped her back. A fist crashed against her Harley's tank, the echo ringing like a gunshot. Jade whirled to find Blake's smirk blooming wide. "Oops," he drawled, making no effort to hide his glee. "Hope you've got insurance, sweetheart. Oh wait, your kind doesn't, do they?" Her fingers tightened around the keys. She backed up until the cool flank of the bike pressed against her spine, then with deliberate calm slid the keys into her pocket, crossed her arms, and planted her boots as if she owned the ground more than any of them ever could. Mason sauntered forward, mouth twisted in a sneer. "What's wrong, Jade? Cat got your tongue, or are you too good to talk to us?" "I don't talk to animals," she answered, voice low and steady. The laugh that followed was uglier, edged with the thrill of a trapped creature finally snapping back. It only whetted their appetite. Ryder's smirk darkened as he pulled a worn switchblade from his pocket and snapped it open, the blade flashing in the dying sunlight. He crouched beside the Harley, dragging the tip slowly along the seat. "Bet you'd cry if something happened to this pretty leather," he murmured, almost tender. "How about a little keepsake?" Her heart hammered, but her expression stayed stone. The instant the steel bit down, she surged forward, hand clamping his wrist with speed and strength that stunned them both. She pressed just hard enough to widen his eyes and crack his swagger.
"Don't touch what isn't yours," she said, each word measured and ice-cold. Ryder tore free, jaw tight with fresh humiliation as the circle pressed closer, feeding off the rising charge. Mason shifted forward, but froze when her stare cut straight through him. For one breathless moment, it was 8 against 1, the air humming with imminent violence. It might have erupted right there, if not for the sudden flash of blue and red lights carving across the lot, siren wailing sharp into the night. Heads snapped around, even Ryder paused, doubt flickering in his eyes. Jade released his wrist and stepped back, a thin thread of hope sparking in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, someone had finally seen enough. A patrol car eased to a stop at the edge of the asphalt, siren dying away, engine idling. Through the windshield peered a face she knew too well, Officer Briggs, a man far more loyal to his fishing buddies than his badge. Relief and dread tangled inside her. She drew herself up straighter, bracing as the weight of the town's twisted version of law settled heavier in the air. As the officer climbed out, Ryder's cockiness flooded back. He leaned in close, voice a private taunt. "Around here, the law knows exactly who matters, and it sure as hell ain't your kind." But Jade held the approaching officer's gaze without blinking. Tonight, she would not vanish, not for Ryder, not for anyone. Officer Briggs, mid-40s, face weathered by sun and smoke, ambled straight past Jade and stopped in front of Ryder. He grinned wide, clapped Ryder on the shoulder, then gripped his hand in that familiar shake born from weekends on the lake, stories traded around campfires, a town where badge and bloodline bled into one another. "Evening, boys. Out kinda late tonight." Briggs's voice carried that warm, almost fatherly tone. Ryder played innocent to perfection, eyes wide, stance relaxed. "Just hanging out, officer. Didn't expect the light show." Briggs chuckled low, then turned, his face hardening as he finally noticed Jade. "Step away from the bike. License and registration." Jade's jaw clenched, but she complied, pulling her wallet and sliding out the papers tucked behind the worn ID she'd carried since high school. "You might want to check their pockets, too," she said evenly, nodding toward the knife still gripped in Ryder's fist. Briggs didn't spare Ryder a glance. "No reports of any trouble, sweetheart," he drawled. "Folks around here get jumpy when outsiders show up with something that nice." He examined her documents slowly, deliberately, his eyes lingering on her last name as if hunting for an excuse. "Never heard of an Iron Hawk," he muttered, handing the license back. "So you're just passing through?" Mason cut in, smooth and smug. "She's not from around here, officer. We figured maybe she lifted that bike, just looking out for the town." Briggs turned to Ryder, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "You boys always watching out for your neighbors, huh?" Jade's patience fractured. "He tried to cut my seat," she said sharply. "Ask your model citizen where he's hiding that blade." Ryder raised both hands, picture of innocence. "You serious, Jade? Lying to an officer?" She locked eyes with Briggs. "I'm not lying. Camera's right there. Check the tape." Briggs's gaze flicked upward for half a second, smirk untouched. "I'll get around to reviewing it after I handle some real crime tonight." He stepped closer, voice dropping low for her ears only. "You know how things work here, right? This ain't your big city. Don't start trouble." Jade pulled in a steadying breath, anger simmering just under the surface. "You're not even gonna ask why they're circling me like vultures, or why he's carrying a weapon?" Ryder leaned in again, confidence surging. "Maybe learn to take a joke, or maybe you just don't belong here." A muscle twitched in Briggs's jaw, but his stare stayed fixed on Jade. "Smart thing would be to let it go, kid. Folks remember troublemakers." The message landed clear. She was alone. Without another word, Briggs sauntered back to his cruiser, tossing Ryder a quick wink on the way. He fired up the engine, music thumping loud as if the night held nothing worth fixing. For a fleeting moment, his eyes caught Jade's in the rear view, a silent warning she'd heard too many times before. Then the car rolled away, leaving only exhaust and the heavy taste of defeat.
Ryder's mouth curled into a sneer as he snapped the knife open again, twirling it expertly, steel catching the last light. "Did not tell you?" he said, voice soft and venomous. "Out here, I am the law." The others laughed louder, fueled by Briggs's dismissal. Mason mimed finger guns. Blake slammed his fist against Jade's bike once more, pushing boundaries further. For the briefest second, Jade weighed running, but the camera overhead and all those silent witnesses held her steady. She straightened, spine steel, and met Ryder's stare head-on. "You think you're untouchable because of your daddy, but you're just a coward hiding behind a badge that isn't even yours." Ryder's nostrils flared, the others falling quiet as the air darkened. "Careful, Jade," he warned, voice shaking with something nastier than anger. "Keep talking, and nobody's gonna hear you scream." The patrol car's taillights disappeared, its absence louder than the siren had ever been. No help coming, not here, not now. Ryder let the knife dangle loose at his side, daring her to move. The circle tightened again, laughter turning sharper, threats no longer veiled. Jade slowed her breathing, searching every face for a flicker of doubt, a crack in the wall of hate. She found only contempt. Outnumbered, outarmed, but still unbroken. Not yet. Ryder spun the blade one last time, then closed in, breath hot against her ear. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" He didn't wait for an answer. Fury warped his face as he lunged. Raw power and wild rage drove his fists. His crew whooped, ravenous for the moment she'd finally break. But Jade had grown up surrounded by men twice Ryder's size and 10 times meaner. The chaos of violence didn't paralyze her, it sharpened everything. The instant his fist cut through the air, she dropped low, body reacting on pure instinct, every harsh lesson from her father flashing bright in her mind. Ryder charged again, swinging wild for her ribs. This time she snared his arm mid-motion, pivoted her hips, and with a clean, practiced throw, sent him flipping over her leg. He crashed onto the concrete with a sharp smack of flesh on oil-stained ground that rang across the station. The ring of boys stumbled back, shock ripping them from their bloodlust. "Get up, Ryder," Blake yelled, voice breaking in disbelief. "She's just a girl, man." But Ryder's wounded pride ignited into pure fury. He bucked and twisted, trying to shake her off, yet Jade locked his arm tight, knees pinning his shoulders, forcing his face inches from the grimy pavement, her hold unbreakable, her voice low and steady for his ears alone. "You want to fight? Fine," she said, words clipped and fierce, "but you don't get to hurt me for free, not after the years I spent learning how to stop men like you." She kept him pinned, staring straight into the raw panic flaring in his eyes, letting him taste the same humiliation he dished out so many times. Then she released him. Ryder scrambled to his knees, gasping, palms slick with oil and defeat. He looked wildly for backup, but his crew only stared, frozen between stepping in and bolting. Jade rose slowly, brushing dirt from her jeans without a hint of triumph. She didn't need to gloat. The point had landed. Yet humiliation is a match to dry grass, and in boys like Ryder it blazes fast. He smeared the grime from his face, eyes narrowing to slits of pure burning hate. "She's just got lucky," Mason muttered, though even he didn't sound convinced. Ryder shoved past him, face flushed with shame. For one brief second, he saw Jade not as easy prey, but as a real threat, someone who had cracked the armor of his family's name, the rules that had always bent for him. Then something inside him broke loose. He didn't go for the knife or another swing. Instead, he stormed to the pump, hands shaking as he seized the nozzle. The others watched, unsure whether to cheer or stop him, a hollow madness creeping into Ryder's stare that chilled even the boldest among them. He ripped the hose free, gasoline splashing across his shoes and pooling on the concrete. He aimed it at the Harley and squeezed, sending a hard stream of fuel over gleaming chrome and leather. Droplets hit Jade's boots, the sharp stink filling the air. "What the hell are you doing, man?" Blake whispered, bravado cracking. Ryder ignored him, flashing Jade a warped grin that dared her to beg, dared her to break. Want to act tough? Let's see how tough you are without those fancy wheels. Jade held his gaze without flinching, though inside warning screamed. This had stopped being a high school power play. It was something far darker. Ryder's eyes were void of reason, empty of anything human except the rush of destruction. She scanned the edges for any ally, anyone willing to step up, but the boys stayed back, trapped between the show and the growing realization they'd crossed into dangerous territory. In their world, loyalty only went as far as zero risk. Ryder squeezed harder, fuel spreading around the Harley's tires in shining puddles. The fumes burned her throat, but Jade stayed rooted, mind racing through options, every route blocked by bodies and cowardice. Her fingers curled at her sides, ready. You know what happens to people who cross me, Ryder growled with voice thick with unhinged rage. They lose everything. Jade stared him down, pulse hammering yet refusing to show fear. You've already lost, Ryder. You just haven't realized it yet. For one suspended heartbeat, the world went still. The line was gone, and they all felt it. Eyes darted from the spreading gasoline to Jade's unflinching stare. No one moved. Ryder's hand drifted toward his lighter, and for the first time his friends shifted uneasily, the prank twisting into a nightmare. In that instant, Jade saw it clear. She was facing someone ready to burn it all down just to feel in control again. Ryder hit the trigger once more, unleashing another flood. Gas sprayed across her jeans and sheeted over the Harley, turning polished metal into a deadly mirror. Their eyes locked, hers blazing with fury and defiance, his vacant except for destructive thrill. The others finally understood this wasn't a joke anymore. "Ryder, man, that's enough," Mason said, voice cracking as he grabbed Ryder's elbow to pull the nozzle away. But Ryder shook him off with a snarl that barely seemed human. "Back off," he barked at his crew. "Hold her." The order fractured the group. A few hesitated, horror dawning, but Mason and Blake lunged forward anyway, seizing Jade's arms. She exploded like a trapped wolf, twisting, kicking, driving every ounce of hard-won strength into the fight for the respect they'd tried to strip away. Blake took a knee to the ribs and folded with a grunt.
But Mason's grip clamped harder, driven by fear and the desperate urge to prove his loyalty. Another hand jerked her ponytail back sharply, sending the world tilting. Jade's fists lashed out, knuckles cracking against skin and ego alike. Yet for every boy she dropped, another surged forward to fill the gap. Through it all, she heard Ryder's laughter, high and ragged with triumph, as he soaked the Harley's leather seat and sprayed more gasoline across the shining tank. The fumes seared her throat and stung her eyes. Fury roared inside her, but her body was trapped, boots sliding on the slick ground. "Let go of me!" she snarled, raking nails down Mason's forearm hard enough to draw a sharp yelp. "You're all insane!" "Hold her tight," Ryder barked. "You want to see tough? Watch this." Everything blurred into fragments. The quick flick of Ryder's lighter, his hand trembling but hidden under a rush of madness. Blake's silent hesitation as he backed away. The world narrowed to that single flame dangling over her bike. "No, don't!" Jade's scream tore loose, raw and gut-deep, a cry wrenched from the core of everything she'd lost. Ryder only grinned wider, eyes gleaming with violent promise as he flicked the lighter toward the fuel. One heartbeat of dead silence. Then hell erupted. Flames burst across the Harley in savage orange and white, swallowing every curve of her pride, her escape, the one place she'd ever truly felt free. The blast of heat slammed her face, driving her backward. For an instant, she forgot the hands pinning her, forgot the taunts, forgot everything but the sight of the machine that had carried her through countless lonely miles, turning into a pyre. She sagged in Mason's hold, stunned into helplessness. The boys released her as fire leapt higher, panic finally flashing across their faces. They'd craved terror, not total destruction. Ryder alone was ecstatic, stepping back with phone raised, filming the blaze in jittery, gloating clips. "Look at her," he crowed, "queen of the road. Not so tough now, huh?" Thick smoke rolled out, choking the dusk. Jade lurched forward, reaching uselessly toward the inferno, as if bare hands could drag it back. Blake tried to stop her, but she shoved him away with a surge of shattered strength. An animal sound ripped from her chest, rising over the crackle and roar. She wanted to rip the night apart, to bury Ryder under his own viciousness, but all she could do was stand witness as her Harley burned. Ryder's manic laughter sliced through the chaos. "Smile for the camera, Jade. You'll remember this every time you think you're big time." She reeled back from the heat, smoke tracing tears down soot-streaked cheeks, eyes burning with grief and rage. Her fists trembled at her sides. Every year of keeping her head low, every fight she'd endured had funneled into this moment, stripped bare, humiliated, left with ashes. Yet through the haze, something shifted, pain hardening into ice-cold resolve. Fingers shaking, she pulled out her phone, face smeared with sweat and grime. She dialed without hesitation, breath shallow, heart hammering like war drums. A voice answered, low thunder barely leashed. Jade. She kept her composure iron tight, refusing to let the boys see the fracture. Her words came out calm and frozen. "Dad, Iron Hawk, Route 66, they burned my bike." For a moment, only the fire spoke. Then, cutting through the crackle, came the distant growl of engines, a vow of retribution. "I'm at the intersection," Iron Hawk rumbled. "Stay on the line." The call ended abruptly. Jade's fingers clenched around the phone, determination rising beneath the sorrow. She turned to face Ryder, whose grin faltered, replaced by the first shadow of doubt. For the first time, he looked small, a fallen king on scorched ground. The pavement seemed to vibrate under their feet, not from terror, but from the storm of vengeance racing toward them at full throttle.
At first, it was nothing more than a faint tremor under the concrete, so subtle the boys barely registered it. But Jade felt it deep in her bones. She knew that growing thunder rolling in from the horizon, not storm, not panic, but pure, unstoppable justice. 40 engines roared out of the fading sunset, headlights cutting bright paths, chrome catching the last red and gold light as tires devoured the road. The howl rose like a banshee wail, drowning the crackle of flames, riders' ragged breathing, the nervous whimpers of boys whose swagger had finally crumbled. The gas station that had been their kingdom of hate and small-town arrogance only minutes ago was now surrounded. Leather-clad giants swept into the lot, patches flashing winged skulls of the Hell's Angels. This was no longer a story Ryder could spin or control. Ironhawk led them, inevitable as reckoning itself. He swung off his Harley with heavy finality, boots hitting pavement like hammer blows, his huge frame silhouetted against the blazing lineup of headlamps. Gray streaked his beard, his face etched with scars from storms no one in town had ever dared ask about. Few had met his eyes since the night he rode out years ago, leaving a silence that still haunted the hardest men. Now he was back, and he hadn't come alone. He'd brought family. Jade stood in the wreckage, smoke-blackened and shaking, yet refusing to let tears fall. Flames danced in her eyes. For a moment she was small again, scared, furious, alone. Then Ironhawk's arms wrapped around her, grounding her against a world that had tried to tear her apart. He asked nothing, no "are you hurt" or "what happened," just gripped her shoulder, looked straight into her soul, and spoke the way only a father could. "They'll never lay a hand on you again, Jade." She swallowed hard, fingers tightening on his jacket. The riders formed up behind them, faces stone, fists clenched, engine still growling low with promise. Ryder shrank back, his crew flanking him like they expected salvation, but the myth of his power had shattered.
Ironhawk turned, slid off his dark glasses with slow deliberation, and fixed his stare on Ryder. Silence fell thick and choking. "You burned the gift I gave my daughter," he said, voice weighted with sorrow and rage. "You made her bleed, and you laughed while you did it." He stepped closer, every motion controlled, menace clear as daylight. "You thought you were untouchable because your daddy wears a badge, because these cowards prop you up? Tonight, you answer to me." Ryder's mouth worked, lips trembling, words choking in his throat. I didn't, she... Ironhawk ignored the stammered excuses. With a sharp snap of his fingers, Reaper, one of the biggest, built like a wall, with arms thick as steel, grabbed Ryder by the collar and slammed him to his knees, grinding his face into the oily concrete at Jade's feet. "Learn how to bow before I show you how to stay down permanent." The rest of the jocks froze solid, trapped between running and fighting, but none moved a muscle. Ironhawk knelt beside Jade, voice low yet carrying to every coward in earshot. "They tried to break you in front of this whole town, girl, but you didn't break, did you?" "No, Dad, I never will." He rose and faced the boys. "There are real consequences here. Touch one of ours, you answer to all of us." Reaper shoved Ryder's head lower, dirt scraping his cheek. For the first time, Ryder was utterly powerless, eyes shining with terror, the smirk that had ruled the town erased. A few riders drifted toward the trucks, knuckles popping, ready to dismantle everything Ryder valued. The message rang clear: pain dealt out, returns multiplied, when justice comes on two wheels. Ironhawk raised a hand, halting them. "Not yet. Let him look at her. Let him see exactly what he's done." Jade drew a deep, steadying breath. She didn't look at Ryder. Instead, her gaze cut past him to the rear of the truck, that nagging detail resurfacing. "Wait, Dad. He's not scared enough of us. He's hiding something." The bikers paused, heads turning. Ironhawk followed her line of sight, eyes narrowing. "What is it?" She pointed at the uneven truck, voice calm as granite, back wheels sitting low. Silence dropped heavy over the lot. Reaper released Ryder, who crumpled, shaking, to the ground. Several riders closed in on the truck, circling like predators around cornered prey. Ironhawk squeezed her shoulder once more. "Smart girl, stay close." As they pried open the hidden compartment, Jade kept her stare forward, jaw locked, refusing to give Ryder the satisfaction of seeing her crack. Whatever lay inside would shift everything. But right now, justice wasn't only thunder and fury. It was patient, sharp, and hers.
And tonight it belonged to her. A thick silence blanketed the gas station, electric with tension and laced with acrid smoke. The motorcycles idled low and menacing, forming an unbreakable wall of steel and leather that trapped every onlooker, every coward, every silent accomplice. No one dared breathe too loud. Jade stood beside her father, encircled by the Hells Angels, her eyes locked on Ryder's battered Ford F-150. Ryder, who had strutted like a god only minutes earlier, now trembled with a fear he couldn't hide. He flattened himself against the truck's side as Reaper and two others, Knox and Shade, closed in on the rear axle. Their heavy boots struck the pavement like countdowns, each one a reminder that justice had its own rhythm. Reaper dropped to a crouch, studying the sagging suspension. He rapped his knuckles against the fender, listening to the hollow ring, then gave Shade a sharp nod. Flathead. Shade pulled a crowbar and wedged it under the spare tire, working the corroded bolts loose. Breath caught in every throat, the air snapping with impending exposure. Ryder's voice finally cracked, shrill and frantic. "Stop! You can't! Get away from there!" The plead bounced uselessly off the pumps, already too late. Knox seized Ryder by the collar and forced him back to his knees. "Should have thought about that before you lit the match," Knox rumbled, contempt thick in his throat. Moments later, the spare tire thudded to the ground and rolled away. Tucked behind it, in the grime, sat a dented black metal box. Shade hauled it out, popped the lock, and stepped aside so Ironhawk and Jade could see. Stacks of zip-locked bags filled with white powder and pills, rolls of cash, the sour stink of dirty deals. But what froze Jade's blood was the dull gleam of 2 police badges nestled among the filth, serial numbers ground off, yet still reeking of stolen authority. Shock rippled through the crowd like a wave. Even Ryder's crew reeled back, color draining from their faces. This wasn't just bullying anymore. It was organized crime, deep corruption, the ultimate betrayal of everything a badge was meant to stand for. Ironhawk's expression turned to granite. He reached in and lifted one defaced badge between thumb and finger. "Whose is this, Ryder?" he asked, voice quiet and deadly. Ryder's remaining bravado shattered. "It's not mine. I swear. I don't know anything." His words climbed into a panicked squeal. "You have to believe me." Reaper planted a boot between his shoulder blades and pressed him flat. Time for lying's over. Jade stepped forward, voice steady and icy. "You think your father's name makes you bulletproof? You think hiding badges keeps you untouchable? You're nothing but a common criminal." Knox upended the box, spilling the rest across the asphalt, pills bouncing, cash fluttering, badges catching the dying sunlight like accusations. A low murmur rose among the riders, anger swelling hot. Years of being branded outlaws, shunned and harassed by men like Deputy Chief Harlan, surged back in a rush. Now the rot was exposed in front of the entire town. The poison had always festered from inside. Ironhawk let out a low, bitter laugh. "Call the state police. This is too big for your daddy's back pocket to bury." Phones came out fast, riders dialing troopers and capturing every piece of evidence in sharp photos. Jade stood in the center of it all, fists tight at her sides, pulse racing with the certainty that tonight everything changed. Tonight no deal would vanish in a back room, no quiet warning would suffice. Ryder whimpered, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on his face. "Please, no, you can't let them see this." Jade met his eyes, voice hard as flint. "Everyone needs to see it, Ryder. That's how real change starts." Slowly, townsfolk crept closer, pulled by the spectacle and a long-denied hunger for justice. The riders held the evidence high for all to witness, and even the doubters saw it clear. The old way was dead. Ironhawk passed the black box to Jade. "Your call, girl. Where does this end?" She didn't hesitate. "Not here. We're taking it to his house. Let the whole town see exactly what the Harlan family stands for." Agreement rolled through the riders like thunder. Engines roared back to life, headlights sweeping together into a single blazing column that no one could ignore. Reaper hauled Ryder upright and marched him at the front of the line. As they rolled out, engines screaming, proof clutched tight, Jade felt the night shift beneath her. The era of fear finished, the age of secrets over.
What came next would rattle the foundations of the entire town. Streets that had always lain quiet and empty after dark now shook under the fury of 40 roaring motorcycles. Engines tore through the night, silencing every whispered excuse and long-protected lie that had shielded the powerful for generations. Headlights carved a blazing trail down Main Street, Ironhawk riding point. Jade rode beside him in the cab of Reaper's battered truck, the black evidence box gripped tight in her lap. Behind them, Ryder stumbled forward, arms twisted back by Knox and Shade, raw fear shining in his eyes and spreading like wildfire. His once loyal crew melted into the growing crowd, desperate to disappear. The riders stretched across the road like a living river no dam could hold. Windows lit up as townsfolk woke to the thunder, faces pressing to glass, some venturing onto porches, others filming from shadowed doorways, all sensing the shift as power tilted on its axis. The police station loomed at the end of the street, windows glowing cold and institutional. But as the motorcycles encircled it, engines cut to silence, and a heavier quiet fell. one far more threatening than any roar. Jade stepped down from the truck, boots striking pavement with purpose. The night hung thick with expectation and the unspoken question, would justice finally carry weight here? She strode to the base of the steps, Ironhawk at one side, Reaper, Nox, and the rest of the Hell's Angels flanking her. With a single sharp motion, she flung the black box onto the station's concrete porch. It hit with a heavy thud, lid bursting open, spilling bags of drugs and defaced badges across the ground under the harsh floodlights. Inside the building, duty officers flinched. Two young cops fresh from the academy scrambled for the deadbolt and slammed the door. For years, those walls and uniforms had felt impenetrable. Tonight, they seemed paper-thin. "Come out and look at what your badge pays for now," Ironhawk thundered, voice carrying down the block. "Fear, shame, and poison sold to your own kids." No one emerged. Jade's voice followed, clear and cutting. "If you won't answer, we'll show the town ourselves. Open the doors." A crowd gathered along the sidewalk, neighbors old and young, every shade and background, pressing closer as word raced ahead. This wasn't just a biker grudge, it was a reckoning decades overdue. At last, the door creaked open. Deputy Chief Harlan stepped from the shadows, uniform pressed sharp, hand hovering near his holster. For an instant, he seemed the towering figure who'd ruled these streets with a glance, but the headlights swung toward the entrance, pinning him in their glare. His eyes met Ironhawk's, and a visible shudder ran through him, color draining away. In that frozen second, old memories flared, youth shared, promises made and broken, brotherhood curdled into bitter rivalry. The mask of authority cracked. He looked suddenly old, cornered, diminished. Harlan's fingers tightened over his weapon. "What the hell is the meaning of this?" he demanded, but the words landed hollow, unconvincing even to his own officers. Ironhawk advanced, every step deliberate. "Your son's luck ended tonight, Harlan, and so did yours." Ryder was shoved up the steps and collapsed at his father's feet. "Dad, please, they're lying. It's not mine, I swear." Harlan barely glanced down, gaze welded to Ironhawk. Behind the glass, some officers fumbled for radios, others stood frozen, overwhelmed by the unfolding collapse. Jade lifted her chin and spoke loud enough for all to hear. "We found your badges, your cash, your poison. Care to explain why your son was carrying police credentials with the numbers filed off? Why his truck held more drugs than your evidence room ever has?" For a long moment, Harlan looked ready to draw, to fight, to call in favors that no longer existed. But the headlights burned into him, and he sagged. "It's all lies," he muttered weakly. Ironhawk silenced him with a raised hand. "Don't insult them. You built this wall of silence. You raised that boy on hate and immunity. Tonight, you both pay the bill." Ryder broke into shaking sobs on the steps. The crowd's low murmur grew as trust in the old guard dissolved. Jade turned to her father, voice low yet piercing the tension. "This isn't only about me, is it, Dad? It's your unfinished business with him, too." Ironhawk nodded, eyes never leaving Harlan. "Everything comes due tonight." For the first time in years, the town's self-appointed hunters, men of power, badges, and buried secrets, felt the chill of being hunted. The force at their door wasn't chaos or bloodlust. It was unified outrage and truth dragged into the open. In that charged hush, the town understood. Justice didn't always wear a uniform.
Sometimes it rolled in on two wheels and refused to be ignored. The night sparked with tension, the crowd frozen as old grudges and buried history crashed together on the police station steps. For far too long, this town had been owned by those who made their own laws, sheltering behind the shine of badges and the shadow of unspoken threats. Now, every hidden thing bled out under the relentless blaze of dozens of headlights and hundreds of unblinking eyes. Ironhawk's boots echoed sharp against the concrete as he climbed the final steps toward Harlan. The two men, once bound by blood and reckless youth, now faced each other mere inches apart,
one weathered by exile, the other eaten hollow by years of corrupt power. A lifetime of unspoken stories passed between them, every broken oath and betrayal hanging heavy in the thick air. Ironhawk's voice, rough but unbroken, cut the silence. "Is this what we bled for, Harlan? You wear a badge paid for with my blood, and this is the boy you raised? Hate, poison, and a kid who thinks he's untouchable because he's never tasted fear?" Harlan tried to hold his jaw firm, but his eyes gave him away. "You walked out, Hawk. You left. Don't come back now acting like you get to judge what you never stuck around to fix." Ironhawk shook his head, a bitter smile etching deeper lines into his face. "You remember that night in the woods when the Hog Gang came for us, and I took the round meant for you. You swore you'd never forget." Harlan's hand inched toward his sidearm, knuckles going white. "Enough. Take your circus and your lies and get off my steps." Ironhawk took another deliberate step. "Or what? You'll draw on me in front of your own son? In front of your town?" Harlan's mask cracked wide open. Years of deals, guilt, and cover-up surged through as his hand flashed to his holster, yanking the pistol free and aiming it square at Ironhawk's head. "Don't come closer," he roared. "I'll shoot. I swear to God I will." A collective gasp swept the crowd. Inside, officers stumbled back, some reaching for weapons, others paralyzed. Jade stood steady, phone raised high, screen glowing in the dark. Live, 5,200 viewers, counting up fast. Ironhawk lifted his hand slowly, palms open, meeting Harlan's wild stare with sorrow more than fear. "You gonna murder me in front of everyone? That your last card?" Jade's voice rang out sharp and clear. "The whole world is watching, Deputy. 5,000 people seeing you point a gun at an unarmed man. Is this your justice, the law you taught your son?" Harlan's hand shook, barrel wavering. For one terrible heartbeat, he looked ready to squeeze. Then his gaze darted to the crowd, neighbors, shop owners, old friends from church, his wife pale and stricken at the back, and to the cold lens of Jade's phone. The facade shattered, the gun dipped, his breathing ragged. Ryder crumpled at his feet, sobbed in heaving gulps, shame and terror choking him. Reaper and Knox edged forward, ready to move, but Ironhawk shook his head. "It ends here, brother," he said quietly. "Right now. Lower the gun or go down in history as the man who killed his oldest friend to protect a rotten empire." The words struck deeper than any blow. Harlan's arm sagged, pistol dropping to his side. Tears welled as he watched his career, his reputation, everything he'd bartered for power collapse in one public instant. Jade pressed on, unrelenting. "You chose this, Harlan. Every dirty deal, every lie you told yourself at night, nowhere left to hide." The crowd surged closer, no longer afraid, but burning with righteous anger. Inside, officers stared at their chief and saw only a broken man. Some rehosted their weapons in shame, others simply looked away. Harlan's legs gave out, the pistol clattering down the steps. "It was never supposed to be like this," he whispered. Ironhawk caught him before he hit the ground, holding him upright not in friendship, but as a living caution. Justice, too long denied, had finally come knocking in full view of everyone. Above him, the live stream climbed past 5,067 viewers, each one another nail in the coffin of the town's corrupt order. In that merciless light, Harlan saw it all, his kingdom of silence undone by his own hand. He was done, and he knew it.
The live stream from Jade's phone spread like wildfire through group chats, bingo nights, church notices, and above all, the old diner where the town's elders gathered each evening over weak coffee and generous slices of pie. Inside the neon glow of that familiar place, everything stopped dead. The comfortable rattle of dice, the quiet clack of chess pieces, The low murmur of stories from better days gave way to a tense hush as 50 weathered faces stared at one shaking screen. Lines etched by decades of labor, war, and quiet disappointment tightened with shock and a slow-burning fury as the night's drama unfolded. There were badges scattered on concrete, pills glinting under lights, Harlan's gun trembling in the glare, and Ironhawk's voice raw and unbreakable. In the back booth, Frank Callahan, Vietnam veteran and once the quiet conscience of Main Street as a deputy's deputy, brought his palm down hard on the formica, mugs jumping and coffee sloshing. His voice, seldom raised, carried clear over the silence. "Enough is enough. Those cowards turned every oath we took into a punchline. They stained the badge and fractured this town." Agreement rippled low and steady through the room. Mrs. Ellis, who had taught 3 generations their letters in their history, brushed tears from her cheeks. "We waited too long, Frank. I always believed someone would stand up. Never thought it'd come to this." Frank rose, shoulders back, the diner falling utterly still. "Time we show everybody what a backbone looks like. Who's with me?" One by one the elders stood, some slow with age, some favoring old wounds, all bound by the same unspoken duty they'd carried for years. No speeches, no plan, just the need to take a stand. In minutes the diner emptied. Word traveled street by street. At the Veterans Hall, Mr. Hanley pulled out his carefully folded flag and passed around old flashlights and worn canes. The call reached porch-bound checkers players, grandmothers on rotary phones, lifelong residents who'd watched justice mocked but never fully crushed. Down Main Street, beneath flickering lamps, they formed a ragged but resolute column. Elders, flag-bearers, mothers, grandfathers, neighbors, each gripping a flag, a flashlight, or a walking stick. They advanced together, steps measured and sure, their very presence a quiet indictment of every time someone had looked away. As they approached the station, the motorcycle engines dropped to a respectful idle. The riders stepped aside, heads dipped in deference to the men and women who had built this town with their own hands. Jade watched in quiet wonder as the elders spread out, creating a living wall between her and the doors, a barrier of living memory no badge or threat could breach. Frank Callahan took the front line, voice firm and calm as he addressed the crowd. "No more hiding, no more shame. We stand for the truth, and we stand for her." Through drawn blinds, the officers inside saw the row of canes and flags, the faces they had known all their lives, now set with unflinching resolve. For the first time, the station felt less like an untouchable fortress and more like a place waiting for confession. Ironhawk laid a steady hand on Jade's shoulder. "They're with you now, all of them." She swallowed the knot in her throat. She was no longer alone, not simply because of the riders, but because the town itself, with all its complicated, flawed heart, had finally stepped from the dark. Yet Jade knew the fight wasn't over. She caught the calculating glint in Harlan's eyes, the last desperate grasp at procedure and fading authority that might let him slip free. She climbed the steps again, shoulders squared, and sat on the cool concrete. In the heavy quiet, she opened her battered laptop, its screen casting a blue glow into the night. The crowd edged nearer, drawn by the promise of buried truth finally unearthed. "If you're going to hide behind the law, Harlan," she said, voice soft but carrying clear, "then let's show them every piece of evidence you tried to bury." The elders nodded, silent guardians in the light of justice too long delayed. Their presence warmed the night and made any further silence impossible. The hush over the town square felt almost holy, a rare quiet born not of fear, but of everyone drawing the same breath at once. Outside the police station, elders and riders stood shoulder to shoulder under the harsh streetlights, faces tight with anticipation. Inside, slipping through a shadowed side door, Jade stole a moment alone with Ironhawk. They tucked into a narrow alcove by the alley, just out of reach of the crowd's roar and the camera's glare, where the night pulsed with anger and fragile hope.
Here, her heart hammered not from dread, but from fierce purpose. She balanced the battered laptop on her knees, fingers trembling now with resolve rather than terror. Ironhawk stayed close, silent at first, watching his daughter work, pride and concern carved deep into the lines of his face. "You sure about this?" he asked, voice low. Jade nodded. "I'm done with secrets, Dad. The town needs to know it all." Her hands moved fast across the keys, passwords falling like dominoes as she unlocked the files she'd collected in quiet months of fear. Texts, voice recordings, screenshots, a hidden record of the school's darkest corners, built while everyone else looked away. At the top sat lists of names, dates, locations, each one an open wound left to fester, pieces of a larger, ugly picture. The deeper she dug, the worse it got. Messages between Ryder and his crew bragging about dealing pills in the locker room for kicks. Threats against anyone who pushed back. She opened an audio file, Ryder's voice scratchy and unmistakable. "You want to stay on the team? Then move these and keep quiet. My dad's got you covered. No one's touching you." She scrolled on to chat logs arranging drops with kids desperate to belong or just survive. A few had tried refusing, most hadn't dared. She clicked a video thumbnail, steeling herself as it loaded. A shaking freshman slammed against lockers, bag ripped open while Ryder and his friends laughed, phones recording. "Don't cry," Ryder mocked, face split by an easy, cruel smile. "You don't want me telling Coach you're using, right?" She paused it, nausea rising sharp in her throat. She'd seen enough. She zipped the files, locked them in an encrypted folder, drew one steady breath, and attached everything to a mass email. FBI field office, 2 trusted reporters, the state attorney general's whistleblower line. Her thumb hovered over send, then pressed. The truth flew free. Ironhawk squeezed her shoulder. "You did right, Jade. Whatever comes next, you did right." She nodded, voice steady despite the shake inside. "It's not finished yet." Her phone buzzed almost immediately, a journalist replying, "Got it. Front page tomorrow. Stay safe." Outside, the energy shifted as word of what she'd done rippled through the crowd in whispers and frantic texts. For the first time, the story was bigger than any local badge could smother. Jade scanned the files once more, spotting a clip she'd missed. She played it, Ryder's face filling the screen, filmed at some party, voice slurred with booze and arrogance. "They're all so easy. Flash some pills and they'll do anything. Scared, broke, doesn't matter. If they don't play ball, my dad gets them gone. Simple." Ugly laughter echoed behind him. She watched it twice, rage cooling into razor-sharp focus. This wasn't just one cruel night anymore. It was a whole machine of cruelty, protected by adults who chose blindness. She clipped the video and pinned it to the top of the email chain. This, she thought, is the closing argument, not just against Ryder, but against everyone who let the poison spread. The instant she hit send again, sirens split the night, sharp and urgent, one joining another, until the street thrummed with arriving state cruisers and FBI SUVs in blue and gold. Ironhawk glanced up, a rare grin cutting through his beard. "Looks like the cavalry showed." Jade snapped the laptop shut and breathed out slow. Time to clean house. Father and daughter stepped back into the open as the crowd parted like water. Hope and fear mingled in the air, while flashing lights washed the square in red and blue, a promise that this time the law might actually reach far enough. Jade stood straighter, eyes bright with something harder than relief. She had stared down monsters hiding behind badges, exposed the smiling evil that shook hands and ruined lives. Tonight, her private record of wrongs had become the town's full reckoning, and it was only beginning. Dawn broke over the town like an accusation, mist rising from empty streets, rinsing away surface dirt, but leaving the deeper stains exposed to daylight at last.
In the square, where headlights and fury had pierced the night only hours earlier, a new kind of turmoil stirred. Not violent, but inexorable reckoning.
Yellow police tape snapped in the morning wind while blue and red lights still pulsed across the courthouse steps, throwing long, accusing shadows. Inside the Harlan home, panic reigned as Deputy Chief Harlan hunched over an old suitcase, cramming in shirts, passports, and fistfuls of cash. His hands shook violently as he glanced at his son, whose nerves had finally shattered with every distant siren. Ryder, the boy who'd worn arrogance like armor yesterday, now looked pale and hunted. "We're leaving," Harlan hissed, voice strangled with urgency. "Now, Ryder, no talking to anyone. Get in the car. You hear me?" Ryder could only nod, throat locked tight. For the first time, he truly grasped what it felt like to be trapped with no way out. The swagger, the casual cruelty, all gone, replaced by raw desperation. Downstairs, Mrs. Harlan clutched her phone, tears carving silent paths down her face as breaking news alerts flashed. State police and FBI raid town over corruption scandal. Her eyes fixed on the television, where Jade's emails dominated the screen, and old footage of Ryder, wild-eyed and bullying classmates, looped endlessly, his once proud voice now condemning him to the world. Outside, the square swarmed with state troopers and federal agents. Iron Hawk stood firm with the Iron Hawks, their presence both protection and defiance. The elders who'd held vigil through the night formed a quiet perimeter, no longer just observers, but guardians of whatever came next. Harlan shoved Ryder out the back door toward the waiting black SUV. The engine snarled to life as Harlan jammed the key home, and they peeled away, skirting the blocked square, hearts pounding, eyes darting to every flash of light. They made it only 3 blocks before Jade and Ironhawk spotted them. Jade swung onto Reaper's Harley, her own bike ashes now, but her determination forged harder than ever, weaving through traffic with the Ironhawks roaring behind. "There!" she shouted, pointing down Elm Street. The SUV raced toward the town limits, aiming for the old logging road, the last route still open. Reaper pulled alongside. "Ready?" Jade's jaw set like iron. "Let's finish it." They split, Ironhawk leading a group straight for the highway, while Jade and Reaper cut left across the empty park toward the intersection. The chase ignited. Harlan blew a red light, Ryder's face pressed to the window, watching the swarm of bikes gain ground, knuckles white on the door handle. "We can still make it," Harlan muttered, half hope, half prayer. But Jade knew these streets like scars on her own skin. She read the turn, flew down a narrow alley and burst onto the main road, blocking their path. Tires screamed as Harlan braked hard, the bikers fanning out to seal every escape. Troopers closed in from the opposite side, boxing them completely. Time stopped, the hunters now the hunted. Jade dismounted and walked forward, deliberate into the headlights, gaze fixed first on Ryder, then his father. "It's over," she said, voice carrying to officers, reporters, neighbors alike. "You can't outrun what you've done." Harlan climbed out, hands raised, face ashen. "This is all a mistake," he pleaded, voice breaking. "You're only making it worse, Jade. Let us go. You don't know the whole story." She didn't waver. "Everyone knows the story now. You wrote it in blood, pills, and silence." Doors flew open as state police and agents advanced, weapons ready but lowered. An FBI agent stepped forward, authority ringing clear, even Harlan couldn't deny. "Deputy Chief Harlan, Ryder Harlan, hands where we can see them." Panic seized Ryder. He shoved his father hard, sending the older man sprawling, badge skittering across pavement, then bolted, not toward freedom, but away from the truth he'd hidden behind his whole life. Jade watched almost calmly as the last scraps of his dignity vanished. He managed only a few frantic strides before an agent tackled him face first into the grass, cuffs snapping shut. The crowd gasped, some shaking heads, others staring in quiet pity. Harlan, still on the ground, looked up at his son, betrayal and heartbreak carving deep lines into his face. Whatever fragile hope remained, Ryder's cowardice destroyed it. Agents hauled Ryder upright. He thrashed wildly, pleading, "Dad, help me! Please don't let them!" But Harlan could only bury his face in his hands, utterly defeated. Ironhawk laid a steady hand on Jade's shoulder. "You did what no one else could." She nodded, eyes never leaving the wreckage of a family that had poisoned the town for years, the end of a legacy built on silence and fear.
For a long moment, she simply watched the boy who'd once burned her world dragged away in chains, his father left ruined on the ground. She felt no victory, only a heavy sorrow for the lost, the broken, and the faint hope that at last the cycle might finally break.
A pale gray light filtered through the frosted windows of the Federal Building, casting everything in a cold, lifeless glow. The interrogation room offered no comfort, only steel chairs, a scarred table, and a mirrored wall. Ryder Harlan sat slumped, wrists cuffed, lips drained of color, eyes flicking nervously between the tile floor and the silent ceiling camera. He no longer resembled the swaggering king of any hallway, just a scared kid with nowhere left to hide. An FBI agent leaned in, voice steady and unyielding. "We have the files, Ryder. The videos, the texts, the drugs. You can't run anymore. You can help yourself or stay quiet, but the truth comes out today either way." Ryder swallowed hard, glancing at the two-way mirror, somehow sensing his father watched from the other side. The knowledge made his cuffed hands shake. The room's silence pressed heavy, loaded with everything unsaid. He dragged in a ragged breath, eyes stinging with shame and fury. "You want to know why I did it?" he finally said, voice thin, desperate. "How it all started?" The agent nodded. "Tell us." Ryder's laugh cracked, brittle, almost a sob. "He taught me. My dad, Deputy Chief Harlan, he taught me everything. He said people like Jade didn't belong, said you had to keep them down or they'd take what was yours. He said the town needed order and we were the ones to enforce it." He bit his lip, blinking fast. "He always told me the badge made us untouchable. That's why I never got caught before. He cleaned up after me, scared people, silent. When I started moving pills, just a little for the team, he called it boys being boys. When I got rough, made threats, he looked away. Without him, none of this would have happened." The agent's pen scratched steadily. "You're saying your father enabled it all?" Ryder nodded, voice climbing. "More than enabled, he pushed me. Every time someone called us out, every time a teacher tried discipline, he'd fix it. He wanted me strong, never backing down, using fear if I had to." His face twisted, memories burning. He said the world owed us, that if we didn't fight, someone like Jade would steal our place. The agent let the words hang. "Why tell us this now, Ryder?" He met her eyes, lost, bitter, broken. "Because I've got nothing left. He swore we'd never get caught, said blood was thicker than anything. He was wrong." Behind the mirror, Harlan stood frozen, watching his son come apart, each accusation landing like a blade. His own reflection stared back, hollow as the empire he'd built, guarded and poisoned, crumbled with every word Ryder spilled. Harlan's face twisted, tears blurring features of a man waking too late to the price, duty, integrity, his son's soul, all traded for a legacy of hate and fear. The agent continued. "Did your father ever tell you to target Jade specifically?" Ryder's jaw tightened. He hated her from the start, called her trouble, said kids like her would ruin the school, everything we'd built. When the bullying began, he laughed, told me I was doing the town a service. His voice cracked. I just wanted him proud. Silence swallowed the room, betrayal thick enough to choke the air beyond the glass. Harlan let tears fall freely. His life had been control, streets, school, family, story. Now it slipped away like sand. Ryder slumped, defeated. He always said, "Choose your side." I chose him. Wish I hadn't. The agent clicked off the recorder. That's enough for now. As Ryder was let out, shuffling in chains, Harlan pressed a fist to the glass, face collapsing in grief. No words crossed the barrier, none remained. The wound ran too deep, the legacy shattered beyond repair. In the hallway, Jade waited, ringed by reporters, officers, and the calm strength of the town's elders.
News of Ryder's confession raced outward, one final, brutal truth shattering the last barrier of silence. Whispers spread, the chief's own son turning on his father. Some tasted justice, others only sorrow. Jade's work wasn't finished. The old regime lay in ruins, but she knew hate's scars cut deeper than one family, one trial. She stood on the courthouse steps as a clean wind swept Main Street, carrying promise of accountability and something new. Ironhawk joined her, hand steady on her back. "It's not over, kid, you know that." She nodded, eyes sweeping the gathered faces, some still fearful, some unsure, but many lit with hope. "It's never over," she answered softly, "not until every kid can walk into school knowing they're safe." Above them, the morning sun rose higher, washing away the final shadows of the Harlan dynasty, and for the first time, the town looked ready to face what lay beneath.
The days after unfolded with the steady, unstoppable force of true accountability. For years, the town had averted its gaze from the corruption rotting underneath. Now there was no shadow left deep enough to conceal it. The police station hummed with federal agents and state troopers, every office and corridor alive with interviews, paperwork, and the sharp sounds of consequences finally landing. Strong coffee mingled with an unfamiliar scent of fear. Uniforms that had once demanded automatic respect now hung loose on shoulders bowed by shame, authority crumbling beneath the weight of lies laid bare. At the center of it all, Jade moved, changed, yes, wounded still, but standing tall. Her story, once muffled by threats and tradition, had become public record, splashed across headlines, whispered among parents, and broadcast wide. For a time, she became the voice and face for every silent victim who had ever doubted anyone would listen or believe. At the high school, a heavy quiet settled the morning after the raids. The principal's reserved parking spot sat empty, his name already scraped from the sign. An interim administrator sent from the state patrolled the halls, files under one arm, eyes scanning for any lingering trace of cover-up. Students huddled in anxious groups, wordless as rumors flew about suspensions, investigations, and those who would never return. In the teacher's lounge, Mrs. Harper, one of the few who had always tried to reach Jade, clutched a mug with unsteady hands. "I knew something was wrong," she whispered to the custodian, who only nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. "But I never imagined it went this deep." At lunch, the old hierarchy cracked wide open. Ryder's inner circle, the same boys who had pinned Jade at the station, spat hate, and cheered while her world burned, now sat isolated, pale and quiet, the bravado drained from their faces. Some had faced police questions, others lost scholarships. Most couldn't meet anyone's eyes as Jade walked the halls, head high for the first time in years. When she entered the cafeteria, conversations died, forks froze mid-air. She felt hundreds of glances flicker toward her, then away, as if her presence carried heat, but she refused to shrink. She crossed the room, slow and deliberate, past tables where students parted without a word. The same kids who once laughed at every cruel rumor now avoided her gaze, their mockery turned to shame. Blake tried to catch her eye, regret haunting his expression, mouth opening, then closing, wordless. Jade kept moving. Some would never grasp the damage they'd caused, not really. Others might grow. Forgiveness wasn't her burden, survival was. Outside, news vans still prowled the block, but Jade ignored them, focusing instead on her footsteps, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the knowledge that justice, though slow and flawed, was alive. At the station, the cleansing ran deeper. Harlan was gone, his office stripped of plaques, trophies, photos of father and son. Federal marshals processed compromised officers one by one, badges surrendered, weapons collected, faces turned away. Word traveled fast. Those who had buried Ryder's crimes, erased records, silenced complaints, now faced indictment themselves.
Some wept, some raged, but none dared claim innocence. One afternoon, Jade sat on a courthouse bench, watching the last shackled officers led away. Ironhawk settled beside her, the hard lines around his eyes softened by exhaustion and relief. "You did it," he said quietly. "You made them see what they spent years ignoring." Jade watched, silent patrol cars roll out, sirens off. "I didn't do it alone. Without the elders standing up, without you riding in, I'd have been just another file they closed." Ironhawk placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Maybe, but you lit the fuse. Never forget that." News of the purge spread beyond town limits. Parents, students, teachers from neighboring districts reached out, asking how to demand the same openness, how to ensure their own voices carried weight. For a time, in decades, the air in classrooms and council chambers felt lighter. Problems remained, they always would, but the heaviest chains lay broken. A week later, the new principal called an all-school assembly, speaking plainly without flourish. "There is no room for hate or fear here anymore. If you have a story, tell it. We will listen." Jade stood at the back of the gym, heart racing. For the first time, she almost believed it could be true, yet the wounds cut deep. The night before, driving past the station, she had seen the blackened patch on the pavement, the memory of flames devouring her bike, still vivid and painful. Even with the town scrubbed clean, tormentors exposed, a hollow place lingered, where triumph and loss collided, an ache no victory could fully erase. That evening, Ironhawk found her in the backyard, lost in thought. He tossed her a set of keys. "Come with me." They rode in silence along the outskirts, sky bleeding gold behind them. He turned down a private dirt track to a low, dusty garage where the Ironhawks had gathered, Reaper, Knox, Shade, and the rest. On the workbench, under harsh fluorescent lights, waited a bare frame, surrounded by gleaming parts, chrome, steel, fresh leather, the air thick with oil, paint, and the promise of rebirth. Ironhawk nodded toward it.
"We can't replace what was taken from you, but we can build something stronger. You earned this, Jade." The Hells Angels dove into the work, laughing, ribbing each other, debating torque specs and timing like old married couples. Jade's pulse quickened as she watched the new bike emerge, piece by piece, a fusion of salvaged and fresh parts, no longer a reminder of loss, but a testament to endurance. Outside, the night lay calm, the town shifting beneath her feet, and she along with it. For every scar, every absent friend, every lingering shadow, a fresh engine growled awake, proving that even in a place long choked by silence, hope could thunder back to life. The small garage behind the Ironhawks clubhouse filled with the rich scent of oil, raw metal, and new paint. Morning light slipped through a grimy window, striping the scarred workbench, piled with tools, stained mugs, and components of a dream rising from ashes. Jade wiped grease from her hands, heart racing, with a hope that felt strange yet fiercely hers. It had begun without fanfare, no speeches, no ceremony, just Ironhawk pulling back a canvas tarp to reveal a bare, polished frame, waiting for its own history. The men crowding the garage that morning were town legends, known for calloused fists and harder lives, yet as they ringed Jade and the growing bike, their voices eased, faces warmed with pride and something deeper. Knox spoke first. "This is your ride, Jade, built by every one of us from the best parts we had. Nobody rides alone, not here." Reaper, the one who always seemed carved from stone, held out custom handlebars, almost bashful. "These came off my first bike. Keep 'em steady, they won't fail you." Shade wheeled in the tires, black as night, gleaming under the lights. "New wheels can take you anywhere. You ready?" His smile hesitant, but Jade met it with a firm nod. Every rider contributed something, a carburetor handed down from an old mentor,
a hand-stitched seat, mirrors scarred from past wrecks and hard-won triumphs. Even the paint carried meaning. Deep indigo shot through with silver, chosen by Mrs. Harper, who had dropped off cookies and ended up laying color on bare metal herself. Every piece held someone's past, a gift and a dare wrapped together. Hours melted away, laughter bouncing off walls mixed with good-natured curses and sharp directions. Jade's hands found rhythm, learning from every rough palm guiding hers, tightening bolts, smoothing chrome, wrestling wiring. For the first time, her grief felt shared, not solitary, matched by the stories these men wore like leather. Midday, Ironhawk called a pause, pouring strong coffee, letting the others talk while pulling Jade aside. "You know the real reason we're doing this?" he asked, eye serious. She paused. "Because my old bike's gone?" He shook his head. "Because you're truly one of us now. This isn't just steel, it's a vow. If you ever feel alone again, remember every hand that touched this engine. Every man here would ride through fire for you. You earned that." Jade blinked against sudden heat, looking at the circle of patched jackets, the easy laughter, the visible scars. These men knew loss, exile, second chances. In their company she discovered real belonging, a space not merely to endure, but to guide. By late afternoon, anticipation crackled in the garage, final bolts snugged, decals applied, chrome buffed to mirror. The last piece, the gas tank, deep blue, bearing a lone silver-winged skull. Ironhawk pressed the keys into her palm. "Your honor." Silence fell thick as Jade straddled the seat, hands trembling slightly as she turned the key and hit the starter. For a breathless second, nothing. Then the engine caught and roared alive, wild and liberated, as if every story in the room had found voice. Cheers exploded, Knox pounding Reaper's back, Shade letting out a whoop, Ironhawk grinning wide enough to crack his face. Jade sat still a moment, letting the vibration sink into her bones, a steady heartbeat reminding her freedom could be forged anew, dignity reclaimed from ruin. She cut the engine, swung off, and rested a hand on the warm tank. "I don't know what to say," she murmured, voice thick. Reaper grunted, awkward with emotion. "Just ride, kid. That's enough." Knox stepped closer, tone softer. "Remember that first ride I gave you? You were scared stiff, but you held on. That's who we see, someone who never lets go." The men closed around her, not merely riders, but family. Rough claps on the back, gruff jokes, yet every gesture carried weight. Respect, hard-won, not handed out for names, badges, or single victories, but because she had held the line and changed the world around her. Ironhawk draped an arm over her shoulders. "When you ride this, you carry all of us. But more than that, you carry every kid who never got to speak up, every soul who thought they stood alone. You're the one leading now, Jade. The road ahead is yours to choose." Quiet settled again. Jade studied the finished bike, gleaming under the lights, a tapestry of loss and devotion, vessel for memory and forward motion. She traced the winged skull, feeling its strength and elegance. "This isn't just a ride, it's a duty. I won't waste it. I'll make it mean something for all of us." As dusk fell, they rolled open the garage doors, cool air flooding in. Jade pushed the bike out, engine rumbling low, a vow that change had come. The Ironhawks followed, boots crunching gravel, heads high. She glanced back once, catching Ironhawk's proud smile, Knox's solemn nod, tears glinting in more than one tough eye. In that instant, Jade understood respect wasn't inherited or demanded. It was forged in fire, given by hands that knew the cost of falling and rising again. She threw a leg over, fired it up, the growl slicing night like belonging, battle cry and prayer in one. And as she rolled from the garage, leading the pack for the first time, the town felt lighter. In the engine's echo, everyone heard it clear. Dignity reclaimed, hope revived, respect earned and freely given. At last, the open road lay ahead, miles unrolling, bright under a sky washed clean for fresh starts.
Jade felt the wind whip hard against her face as she twisted the throttle, hands rock steady on the custom bars Reaper had passed down to her. The rebuilt engine thrummed solid beneath her, the vibration a constant reminder of what could rise from ruin. Behind her, Ironhawk and the Ironhawks rode in tight formation, a brotherhood, an unbreakable vow rolling out of a scarred town toward a horizon finally free of hidden lies. This wasn't escape, it was declaration. They weren't running from the dark, they were charging through it, searing the last traces of old shame into something that could never be forgotten. Sunlight flashed across chrome and worn leather, casting each rider's shadow as a quiet oath. Justice never rested, and neither would they. Not while voices still waited unheard, stories remained untold. At the town's edge, the new police chief, a woman with keen eyes and a grip that ended second-guessing, stood on the sidewalk as the pack thundered past. She lifted a hand in salute, uniform sharp, but expression warmer than any insignia. Jade met her gaze and returned the nod. The chief mouthed words only Jade could catch. "Thank you." It carried more than appreciation. It was an invitation, a shared pact that silence would not creep back so long as even a few refused to yield. Along the highway shoulder, townsfolk lined up, some waving, others simply watching, faces once etched with resignation, now flickering with cautious hope. Mrs. Ellis stood holding her flag. Frank Callahan from the diner hoisted a battered thermos in tribute. Every elder, every parent, every teen who'd once swallowed fear watched Jade lead the way, living proof that dignity could be taken back, that justice, however slow, never truly slept. But not every tale closed in sunlight. Miles distant, under buzzing fluorescents and steel doors, Ryder sat hunched on a narrow jail cot. The cell was cramped, air thick with stale sweat and regret. Time dragged, broken only by radio chatter from guards and muffled voices of men wrestling their own failures. Ryder spoke little. The cocky swagger that once defined him had withered into haunted silence. He barely ate. Nights brought sweat-soaked wakes, the memory of that gas station fire looping endless, Jade's face, flames devouring chrome, jeers twisting into screams, a self-inflicted sentence sharper than any judge's gavel. In rare, clear moments, he stared at the bare wall, whispering, "Why did I do it?" The question echoed back, emptier each time. One afternoon, when thin sunlight finally reached the bars, the warden, an older man, lean with kind eyes and steady authority, paused outside. He'd seen Ryder's slide from defiant kid to hollow shell. "Son," he said softly, "you pace like something's devouring you from inside. Want to talk about it?" Ryder kept his head down at first, then lifted red-rimmed eyes. "It's that night, the station, the fire. I see it whenever I close my eyes." The warden waited, patient. Ryder scrubbed a hand across his face. "I thought hurting her would make me somebody, stronger. Instead, it shattered everything, my family, myself. I'd trade anything to undo it." The warden nodded, knowing old wounds. Hard path ahead, but not every lost soul stays lost. Ryder shook his head, voice a broken murmur. "I don't think I can fix this, or ever deserve to." Quiet lingered. The warden rested a weathered hand on the bars. Simple, neither judgment nor absolution. "Redemption begins with facing truth, son, and maybe granting yourself the mercy you won't ask from others." When he walked away, Ryder curled into the cell's shadow. The phantom roar of engines, the sear of flames, Jade's unflinching eyes, none would ever fade. Justice, he finally grasped, wasn't only courtroom sentences, but the grinding, unrelenting burden of regret. Back on the highway, Jade rode free of old weights.
For once, she wasn't fleeing town, rumors, threats, but moving forward, ringed by loyalty, hard-earned and fiercely kept. The Ironhawks dropped in behind, trusting her to lead. Ironhawk rode her right, giving one approving nod, letting her set the rhythm. She thought of all who had stood with her, elders trading canes for courage, teachers finding voice, riders choosing creation over destruction. And she thought of those who might never know peace, shattered by hate, by guilt, by choices carved too deep to undo. At a highway pull-off, beneath a wide oak, Jade signaled a stop, gathering the riders. She killed the engine and faced them, voice clear and strong. We fought for justice, not revenge, not pride. We fought because every person deserves respect, no matter appearance, roots, or name. That's the only legacy worth carrying. The men nodded, solemn, proud, some brushing road dust from eyes, others looking away to hide emotion. Ironhawk rested a hand on her shoulder. Road doesn't end, kid, neither does the work, but today you guided us through. Jade smiled, quiet and sure. Respect is earned, not handed out. I understand that now, and I'll carry it every mile, every dawn. They mounted up again, engines igniting like a chorus of determined hearts, the roar fading down the highway as light bled from the sky. Behind them, the town drew easier breath. Ahead, the world stretched vast, unpredictable, yet at last honest. And as they rode, a fresh vow caught the evening quiet. Justice never slept, and neither would those who held faith in what was right.
Jade grew older, but that spark never dimmed, the fire in her stride, the quiet steel behind her smile. The open road called less these days, yet she always answered when her mind needed clearing. The rebuilt bike catching sunlight like a promise, its engine a faithful heartbeat through every chapter of her life. Still, she felt pulled less to endless highways and more to the overlooked places, abandoned brick facades, rusted silos on the outskirts, the broken, discarded things no one bothered to see. In those quiet, forgotten spaces, her restless hands started creating anew. It began with one mural. One late night, she painted the cracked wall behind the old gas station, the very spot where her world had shattered and reborn. Across it, she wrote in bold letters, "Respect is earned, not given." By dawn, people gathered, watching in hushed wonder, whispers soft, curious, touched. Some brought coffee, others shared long-held stories. For the first time, her art began mending what pain had torn apart. That wall was only the start. She covered school corridors, alleyways, clinic waiting rooms, library corners, always bold, always unflinching. Faces of every kind looked out from her work, children of every shade, women in headscarves, elders with gentle eyes and work-worn hands, riders in faded denim, even her younger self, fists clenched, yet eyes kind. Gritty or glowing, every piece carried the same rooted hope that things could heal, that belonging was possible for anyone. Word of her gift traveled past county lines. A city gallery owner made the drive after spotting her pieces online. Jade showed up in paint-splattered tank and ripped jeans, boots scuffed, rings flashing, hair wild beneath a worn bandana. The owner never flinched, just asked, "Got anything else to show me?" She grinned, pulled dog-eared sketchbooks from her pack, pages bursting with color and heart. Soon sales brought sums that left her breathless, enough for rent, better supplies, room to dream larger than she ever had. Money felt odd at first, almost wrong, like luck meant for someone else. But Iron Hawk, older now, eyes gentler over evening coffee, told her plain, "What you make with your own hands has value, kid. Never apologize for that. Just stay true and use it well." Jade listened. She poured a share of every sale back into the town, into the people who had held her up when she had nothing. She founded the Respect Initiative, a fund for youth center art classes, after-school programs, scholarships for teens who'd always felt unseen.
She gave to shelters, ran mural workshops for kids hungry for voice, worked side by side with elders who had once marched beside her. She stayed hands-on. When budgets shrank, Jade appeared herself, boots echoing down hallways, laughter ringing as she hauled in canvases and paint for any child who wanted to tell their truth. "The world's wide enough for you," she'd say, voice rough yet warm. "Don't make yourself small for anybody." Her old label as troublemaker faded, replaced by something deeper, stranger. Some still murmured about her style, the jeans, the ink, the way she wrenched on her own bike, the sly grin that softened every edge. But more and more called her steady, someone who remembered kindness, returned it, never abandoned a friend, always named injustice when she saw it. She wasn't merely respected, she was loved. Her untamed spirit became a light for every outsider, every dreamer in town. One day, after class, a small girl approached, hands streaked blue and green. "Miss Jade," she whispered, shy, "my dad says you're a hero. Is it true?" Jade knelt, eye to eye. "Nah, sweetheart, I'm just somebody who learned not to run. Real heroes choose to stand even when it's scary. Maybe someday that'll be you." The girl lit up. Jade tousled her hair, leaving a blue smear on her forehead, and they laughed together, bright and free. The world shifted onward. Old hurts never vanished, but scarred clean. People recalled the station, the scandal, the reckoning, yet they also remembered the summer the town repainted the elementary school, the scholarships that launched the first black student to art college, the mural greeting newcomers with open arms. Jade's legacy, like her murals, wove from countless quiet acts of care, each one lighting a corner that had once known only dark. Years on, at the dedication of a massive city mural wrapping an entire block, telling how a town faced its ugliest truths and discovered its best, Jade stood before the crowd, still in ripped jeans and boots, paint beneath her nails, her smile unchanged, sly, hopeful, edged with mischief. She spoke softly but sure. "I was never perfect, made plenty of mistakes, but this town gave me room to grow. It taught me respect isn't inherited or demanded, it's built one choice at a time, and the only thing that endures is what you give away." Applause rose warm and full. Iron Hawk, slower now, but straight as ever, wrapped her in a fierce hug. Friends she'd guided, kids she'd taught surged forward, filling the street with laughter, hugs, paint-bright hands. As twilight settled, Jade rode her bike slow through town center, hair streaming, engine humming low. She took in the murals, kids waving from porches, elders toasting from diner steps, and felt a deep, steady pride. She knew the work would never finish, but she had learned a wild heart paired with a kind one could shift the world. Wherever she went, people knew Jade, in her ripped jeans, wolfish grin, unbreakable spirit, was more than survivor. She was living proof hope could thrive untamed, and respect, once truly earned, could spread endless ripples forever.